Morning all. As I may have alluded to before, I'm fortunate to live in a place where Spitfires come over several times a day, particularly in the summer. And last weekend I was the notion came to me that I should begin my 3-year-old granddaughter's education. And while we were in the garden, a Spitfire came over, and I said to her, "Look at that up there," and she says, "Airplane," and I said, "Yes, but it's a Spitfire." And I said, "Can you say Spitfire?" And she went, "Spitfire." And it was a funny little interlude. And then I heard from Mrs. X sometime later that she was in the garden with her, and a Spitfire came over, and she went, "Spitfire." And I thought that was, I thought, well, my work is done here. And it's something that I tried to do with my daughter, her mother, some years ago. And of course, I started later with her, and it was an awful lot of eye rolling when I was trying to explain things to her. And I was saying to her, "You can tell a Spitfire because of the elliptical wing," and and of course you don't think it's going to go in or anything. But these things have an unexpected result sometimes. And when she was with her boyfriend, who she's now currently with, and she happened to be somewhere, and she happened to be somewhere with him, and a Spitfire came over, and she said to her boyfriend at the time, "Oh, that's a Spitfire." And he was kind of surprised by this, and he says, "How do you know that?" And she said, "Because of the shape of the wing." And then another time, this is sort of about insider knowledge. She was also somewhere, and a Vulcan bomber came over. They were near a air show or something, and she sent me a little picture on her phone saying, "What's this aeroplane called?" And I said, "Well, that's an Avro Vulcan." And of course she told her boyfriend, "Oh, that's an Avro Vulcan," and he was well impressed. So the point is that these things have some unexpected advantages, and this is part of education, and this is part of the fight back that we must make. We and our young people, it's been probably 2 generations that they've been told that their culture's shit and terrible and awful, and we're all racist and everybody's better than us, and all of our achievements are denigrated, and everybody else's culture needs to be celebrated. Everybody's except ours, of course. And this poison has taken root into a to a far greater degree than most people even realise. The other day I was watching, yesterday in fact, I was watching a video by the King's Counsel Philippe Sands, who, I don't know if you know, but he's a close friend of our glorious leader, Keir Starmer. And he was instrumental in the British government's surrender of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. And he was being interviewed by some other person, and I'd heard this stuff, but I hadn't actually seen it. But unless, of course, this video was AI, which I don't think it was. But he was saying that Britain is the only country in the world where you can constantly work against your own country's interests, and you can humiliate them, and you will be celebrated for it. And whilst I was beginning to explode inside, to give him his due, which I'm not inclined to give him, but the point I think he was trying to make was that a mature society that is sure of itself shouldn't be afraid of criticism. That was the kind of point he was trying to make, I think. But you could tell he was reveling in it, and when he says that society will celebrate him for it, well, it's only a very small part of society that celebrates him for that, that celebrates people for that. It's the legal profession, it's the midwit class, the lanyard class, a section of the upper middle class. Remainers. Because I'm fully confident the rest of us, if we had a chance, we'd pull the cunt limb from limb. But even on its own argument, even on his own specious argument, it doesn't hold water, because he probably self-styles himself as kind of speaking truth to power. We shouldn't be afraid of admitting our sins and all the rest of it, as if he was some sort of highly principled dissident. But George Orwell was a dissident. Tommy Robinson is a dissident. And these are people who make criticisms of this country in an effort to improve it. Whatever you might think of Tommy Robinson or George Orwell, for that matter. They do seem to be people who want things to improve. I mean, even the sort of super lefty Stephen Fry once being asked about whether he was proud to be British, and I know he's a super lefty, but he said, I was quite encouraged by what he said, and he said, well, I love it like a parent loves a child. You know, I want it to be better. You know, I love it for its qualities, but, you know, I'm not blind to its faults, which is a perfectly valid thing to say. And, you know, for all his leftiness, you know, I think he was telling the truth. I think he genuinely does love this country. Even though he's a stupid Remainer, but, you know, nevertheless. And dissent is something to be celebrated, you know, particularly when it's difficult, particularly when it's unpopular, particularly when you're the only person doing it, you know, and you're not doing it just to be contrary. But somebody like Sands, in a sensible world, and I'm not suggesting that anybody does anything extrajudicial, but in a sensible world with a sensible country that knows its own interests, somebody like Sands would be executed, and he should be. Within the confines of the law, obviously. But of course we don't execute people for treason anymore, and haven't done since Lord Haw in 1946. You know, and the lanyard class would believe that to be progress. And they would even say something as asinine as, well, that's a sign of a strong society that doesn't have to execute its traitors. Well, I would say the opposite. I would say that a strong society punishes severely the people that damage the tribe. Because it sends a message. It sends a message that dissent is fine. You know, sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's inconvenient. But if it's done in the spirit of trying to improve society, that's one thing. But if you're somebody who revels in humiliating your own society, that's not constructive. That's destructive. I mean, Philippe Sands, I guess he's my age, his late 50s or something. And he seems to believe that that this is the right thing to do. You know, what's the difference between him and me? We're about the same age. We grew up at the same time. And rightly or wrongly, I grew up with a deep sense of patriotism. Maybe I'm the deluded one. Maybe. But everything I think and do is, even when I criticise this country, and I do criticise it mostly for its weakness, I do so in the spirit of wanting it to be better. And I don't profit from it. I don't profit from wanting it to be better. Unlike Philippe Sands, who's probably extremely wealthy from betraying his own country so often. But I don't know for certain I mean, part of the reason is Philippe Sands is half French, I think. You know, but I don't know for certain. But I get the feeling that his own grandfather didn't sit him in the garden teaching him about Spitfires. Yeah, I don't know that for certain, but I'll bet that's the case. So it's taken 2 generations to get many of our own people to hate their own country and hate their own society. It's taken 2 generations. And it will probably take 2 generations to get it back. But we have to make a start. And the start is raising the colours. That's the start. And you can tell that the regime doesn't know what to do about that. The regime is running out of answers. Because we will get our country back. We will. I mean, it might be a smoking ruin by the time we do, but we'll get it back. And we have to remember who we are. We have to remember who we are, what belongs to us, and the legacy that we carry. Despite Britain's current enfeebled state, this is perhaps, arguably, the country that has the deepest and richest society of any on earth. And we need to remember that. And remember that if you're putting up flags, or even if you're just smiling at them as you go by. Think about that when you in every arena. The things that this country has done, the impact it's had, It's not about hating foreigners. You know, it's not about that, as we all know. It's about respecting those that came before us, those of us that built this land, those of us who defended it and defend it still. Like those men in the Spitfires. And those that have contributed to this deep, deep, rich culture that we have. From the serious, like the wartime generation, to the somewhat frivolous, like P.G. Wodehouse. Read some Wodehouse, that'll cheer you up. And remember, this country is worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for, partly because it's the only one we've got. It's the only home we have. And also because it's worth fighting for because it's worth fighting for. It still belongs to us. The sun's come out from behind a cloud now, so I'm hoping that looks nice. England as an entity is, what, 1150 years old, something like that? Is it really going to end on our watch? Over my dead body.